I've got the time to show my love and what it's all about.
We're live in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey guys, we are the Socially Inadequate Podcast. I'm your host, Austin.
And I'm Devin.
And we are talking in front of a microphone. Devin, tell us a little bit about our podcast, because this is episode 1.
We created the Socially Inadequate Podcast to help inform you on the things that you always wondered about but never took the time to Google. It's supposed to be about all the things you could think about, something you observed on your drive to work or something you looked at in your house and you always wondered, what is this about? Who created this? Stuff like that.
We will also be talking about just random things that we feel is interesting, our lives a little bit. And that is the majority of what this is going to be about. If you like this, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you're watching this on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, make sure to share all this with your friends and get the word out that the Socially Inadequate Podcast is live.
And the greatest podcast that ever lived.
That's right. That is a fact, not a lie, for sure. Devin, I've got a question for you.
What is it?
How was your week?
My week was pretty good. We were pretty jam-packed with graduation. My brother graduated this week, so of course our whole weekend was filled up with graduation parties, start to finish.
Congrats, by the way. I mean, he finally made it through high school, the easiest part of life.
He did exactly what everybody expected him to do.
Yep, he didn't disappoint anyone when it came to him getting a diploma. Congrats. I hope he's ready for the rest of his life.
And actually, Tanner signed a scholarship over at Springfield, Illinois to go play soccer at a local community college.
That's right.
So,
and we're in Arizona. It's on the other side of the country, basically.
It is.
I'm proud of him. He is able to get out of this town, unlike some people I know.
Unlike us.
Unlike us, who's doing a podcast in the same town. We graduated 5 years ago.
That's hard to believe.
That is insane, right? I can't believe that 5 years ago we were like, it's going to be so easy from now on. No more classes, no more sports.
Oh, that was not the case.
No, it was not.
For all of you high school students listening, it is all downhill after graduation.
Yeah, that's right. It gets way harder. You think high school's hard? Well, guess what? There's people there to keep you on track. College, no one cares. Really, honestly, no one cares whether you show up to that class or not. If you don't show up, you don't show up.
And that's just the way it is.
And that's the way it is. Your parents aren't there to hold your hand. You got to be physically responsible to do stuff on your own. So, Devin, you had mentioned you went to a bunch of parties. How was that?
It was pretty good. It seemed to be the exact same group of people every single party we went to.
That's like a small town mentality, right?
It very much was. It was like bar hopping, but at people's houses.
You guys like nomads or a pack of wolves traveling around.
Pack of wolves.
You were
I like
a pack
that.
of wolves celebrating and partying it up. No alcohol though, so that made it a little
Absolutely not.
long.
Underage drinking is strictly prohibited and is not a good idea.
That's right. The Socially Inadequate Podcast is for non-children drinking alcohol. Wait,
We support all laws and regulations.
there you go. Put a stamp on it. So, Devin, how have you been since graduation? Because, when you graduated, what were your ideas?
My ideas when I graduated were drastically different from my ideas now. Definitely after you graduate, I would take some time to really figure out who you are and what you want to do, because it is extremely different from, your 18-year-old brain to your 23-year-old brain.
So I have this interesting theory. I have a lot of theories, by the way, and you'll hear a lot about them. But these are just theories. These are just my ideas on the world, I guess. So if they're not your ideas, don't freak out about it. But I find it interesting that after high school, everyone is expected to go to college. Not everyone, but a good majority is like, if you want to be successful in life, you go to college. But an 18 or 19-year-old straight out of high school going into college, they don't know what they want to do. They're going to change so much over these next 6 years. I mean, how many people do you honestly think go to school, go for something?
You forgot to turn your phone off.
It wasn't,
That's like
it wasn't
rule
my
number
phone.
one
It wasn't my phone. It was the
in the
laptop.
podcast. What are you doing?
There we go. So, where was I? Because we're keeping all this in.
We were talking about
Oh,
What your ideas on school after you graduate?
So I wonder what percentage of people actually go to school for something and get through the whole 4 years or 6 years or 8 years or 2 years or whatever they want to do, get their degree, and they stick with that one subject. Like, what's the percentage of people
It's
that go?
not. And there's studies shown that adults, modern millennial adults, will have 4 to 6 careers in their life.
Yeah, but don't you think if they waited a little bit, found out who they were, found out their interests and hobbies and everything, and then went to school for that specific thing. Say if we went to school now, being 24, 23, we have ideals now of what we want to do for the rest of our lives. Whereas a 19-year-old doesn't necessarily have that, like, that vision, I guess.
No, I would have been a race car driver, hands down. That's what would have happened.
I would have been an actor.
There you go.
Or
Well, that's pretty similar to what you're doing now.
kind of. I mean, I'm more behind the camera because I'm a videographer and photographer, but I don't know. Acting seems interesting, but I'd rather be the person that creates the magic than is in the limelight, you know?
There you go.
But yeah, now, I mean, when I got out of college, not college, when I got out of high school, I wanted to become a psychiatrist. Talked to my counselor. She's like, there's a lot of math involved. Your math grades aren't the best. And I was like, oh, well, that sucks. And then my girlfriend, who's my wife now, was going into nursing. And I was like, I guess I'll do that. And it's just snap of the fingers. And now I'm in CNA, and I do all these credits to become a nurse. And then I get an actual job, and I'm like, I hate this.
Changed a lot of bed sheets.
Yeah. A lot of butts. Too many butts.
Too many butts of all different ages, which was not, I think, the best thing. That you were not into that at all.
No, I didn't. I did not enjoy my years of CNA work, and that kind of turned me off. But now, you know, I know exactly what I want to do with my life, and I feel like I want to do it forever. I mean, you're going to ASU?
Yes.
And for an engineering degree.
Engineering degree, which is very different from what I wanted to do when I graduated high school.
Yeah.
I thought I was just gonna cut down trees and you know, do some other heavy manual labor like that for the rest of my life until I looked around me, saw lots of broken people.
Small town mentality.
Small town mentality is absolutely right.
So I feel like a lot of kids, they look around and their dad or their parents don't go far. They were born in this town, they grow up in this town, and then they die in this town. And most of them either go work with their dads, or they go and work with who their dad is working with or their mom is working with, and that is how they make money. I mean, I couldn't imagine being, 60 years old, still trying to build houses, having a broken and battered soul from the years of stress. But
and that is, I think that's the mentality of Americans nowadays, is to jump into something. And people got to realize that it's okay to take a step back and figure out what you want to do. It's okay to take a couple years and think about what you really want to be and start to develop your mental health and your, just, I guess, your soul for what you want to be doing the rest of your life. Because those first years out of high school is really, you are on your own. And then you start to realize what's important to you.
Exactly. And, this may be like a millennial Generation X type problem.
I'm a Generation Z.
You're Generation
I
Z?
caught it by 1 year. I'm not able to claim myself as a millennial.
I'm a millennial, that's for sure. But the thing with millennials is we want everything so quickly. We're not patient enough. I mean, everyone wants to be a YouTube star. Everyone wants to be famous on Instagram. I mean, they see Kylie Jenner, who's 21, 22, and she's a multimillionaire, and they're like, oh, well, I'm 19, and I don't even have $100 in my bank account, and she's got millions. And it's like, no, you got to think, like, I mean, Bruce or Caitlyn or whoever, is giving her, like, supporting her. They had to build their lives up to give her the opportunity.
And that's the 0.01%.
Yeah, and that's
right there.
That's insane to think like that. But if you have a dream, if you have some goal in mind, and you decide, hey, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to work hard. You know, I may not be a millionaire until I'm 40, but if I get there, I get there. You know, you build an empire, as they say.
I would suppose so.
Yeah, millennials are, I don't know. They're a special kind. You know what I love? I love how the older generation, the generation before millennials, the ones who are our parents, they're like, well, back in my day,
Back in
my day, we were hard workers and we were great and this and that. It's like, yeah, sure.
I worked 3 jobs all in a row and got all this experience.
Yeah, but
You're lucky to find one job.
yeah, I mean, it's hard out there. But I love how they're like, well, it was so much simpler back then, it's so much harder back then. You kids with your technology nowadays, I'm like, yeah, but I mean, back then you had a lot of racism. You had
Lots of racism.
a lot of sexism in the workplaces, which there still is. I'm not saying there isn't anymore, and there's racism. That still exists in some parts, but for the most part, we are very accepting of every sex, race, gender.
Even here in Sholo, which is a small town,
Yeah.
I've never experienced racism here in Sholo.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, never once experienced it though.
Yeah, and we're I gotta say, we're very tolerant of others and their cultures and who they want to be. I mean, gay marriage is a huge thing, and it's kind of widely accepted now.
We even have that new, what is it called? The Rainbow Friendship Community House?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We have a community house for the LGBTQ community.
WXYZ.
WXYZ.
However many there are.
All 40 of them, 42 of them.
36.
36
No,
of them.
26, sorry. There's 26 letters in the alphabet.
There you go.
Don't get confused here. Sometimes we do know what we're talking about. Not all the time. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, not 36.
This is a podcast, just our opinions, really. I mean, we do want to talk about facts, and we do research a lot, but when we have talks like this, don't expect us to
And don't
research
expect us
everything.
to be entirely factual all the time.
Yeah,
I mean,
if we
we
mess up-
are accessing the same information that you guys could from your laptop. We're just here sharing it with you.
And if we mess up at any point, just go ahead and call us out down in the comments.
Or not.
Yeah, or not. You know, it's up to you.
You could just let it slide.
Yeah, or say, hey, you know, these guys are kind of sweet. They're mean good, but they got this one fact wrong. There's 26, not... Wait, is there 26?
There's 26 letters in the alphabet.
There's 26, not 36. Those morons, I swear to God.
I'm assuming they're ruggedly handsome from their voices.
Something like
so
that.
We'll just let this go. So, Austin, we talked for a long time about doing this podcast, and we talked about what we should talk about on our first podcast. Because this podcast, we wanted to be directed around a subject, like I said earlier, something you observed, something you wondered about. And we wanted to pick a subject, and we wanted to research it, talk about it, all the things that maybe you never had the time to Google or you always wondered about. That's what we wanted to provide to you.
That's right. And, I mean, we went through a lot of different...
We went through a lot of crazy ideas.
a lot of crazy stuff.
Conspiracy theories. Historical events.
Yep. And we came to the conclusion, just, you know, whatever we want to talk about, but we do want to be somewhat informational, something interesting. I mean, Devin and I, we watch tons of documentaries. Things that we shouldn't really be interested in, but we are. Like, surprisingly, we're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. Like, the creation of the aglet. We're like, oh my God.
Aglets.
Aglets, oh my God. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, an aglet is the little plastic piece on the end of a shoelace.
Which I learned from Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and Ferb,
Just
yes.
so you know.
Thank God. But yeah, really interesting stuff. So go ahead, Devin. Let's kick this podcast off. About 15 minutes in.
Cool. That works perfect.
Yeah.
So we talked for a while, and we kind of started looking around the house about things we want to do stuff on. And we were like, hey, what is everybody interested in? And so we were looking around, soap, bottles, you know, anything we could find, we were trying to think about. And then we were like, hey, everybody likes coffee. But I don't know a whole lot about coffee until now. I never knew where it came from, where it developed from, or how they even harvested it. So we decided to do our first podcast about coffee.
Yeah, and coffee is near and dear to my heart. I drink about a pot a day just to survive. It is an addiction, I will say that. So be careful, kids. If you drink coffee, don't let it become an addiction. It's very hard to break. Don't go to Starbucks every day. They will drain you of your money. But personally, I like a cold brew with light foam.
I just like it black.
Devin likes it black, like he likes his other coffee products, not his women.
No, because that would be sexist, and we're not sexist on this podcast.
That's right. We are not. We are accepting of all cultures and love. You love who you love, damn it.
So, Austin and I have a pretty unique blend. I'm really big into history and some of the other things that go along with it, the developmental stuff, and Austin is super savvy on contemporary stuff, such as like the uses of coffee and all that stuff. I've always drank my coffee black.
Devin loves researching things. This is a
Yes.
cool dynamic between us because Devin, he is more like, I need a topic to research. I can't just talk. I can't. I gotta know what I'm talking about. Where I am just like, oh man, like I could talk for days. I'm like my parents. I could just talk and talk and talk. And definitely, I think like social media, when they talk about coffee, or say Starbucks has a crazy thing like back when they had religious themes on their cup. I thought that was so interesting. So yeah, Devin, start us off. Where did coffee come from? What is the beginning?
So, coffee. Austin, do you know what coffee is?
Yeah, it's ground up coffee beans.
Except it's not.
What is it?
Coffee is actually more like a cherry. It grows on a tree.
So it's
just
it's like a pit.
Sort of. It's actually like a cherry. It has a cherry-like surrounding that surrounds the seeds for the coffee. And it actually grows on trees. And most of this dates back to old-time Ethiopia area, right around there.
So it's definitely, those hot, dry, kind of equator type areas. Those produce the best coffee.
Yes, and it's people say that it's very much more like a grape. Like that outer shell, like you would think of as a grape, is pretty bitter, just like a grape is, but then the inside, they say, is intensely sweet. And then you get each coffee berry has 2 seeds in it, which is where you get your caffeine and your other good stuff from.
Really?
Really, really.
So, okay. So it came from Ethiopia in that area. Because I don't think it was probably like documented like, oh, we get really hyper when we eat this berry or this bean. But it's probably somewhere on the equator because that's where it's best known for. Costa Rica, South America, Africa, that kind of
And I actually have the legend for you that is centered around coffee.
Oh.
So, the legend goes that there was an ancient goat herder named Khalidi. And we are probably going to butcher names on this show.
Oh, yeah.
And so
definitely.
you can just forgive us for that. So, ancient goat herder named Khalidi, he first discovered the coffee bean after watching his goats eat these berries on certain trees, and then they would become super hyperactive, and they wouldn't sleep. And he was having just hell with these goats. They wouldn't sleep, they wouldn't herd, they were just super hyperactive.
Yeah.
So he decided to find out what all the jazz was about, and so he went and tried one of these berries and found that it replenished him. It made him awake, stimulated, stuff like that.
Okay.
So he then took this berry to the local abbot at the, is it an abbot? At the abbey?
Abbey?
Abbeys.
Yeah,
like
yeah, no,
those places, and it has an abbot, right?
Yeah.
So he took it to the abbot,
Uh-huh.
and the abbot was like super interested in this, and so he decided to boil it in some water and drink it as a tea, and he found that it kept him super stimulated through their long hours of evening prayer, which I guess was super important back then, was your evening prayer.
Yeah.
And they were just falling asleep, and it was bad news.
Yeah.
Because, it's not good to fall asleep during evening prayer.
No, not at all. No, quick story. When I was younger, I went to church a lot, and every Sunday I would fall asleep. And I was a very bad church boy.
Very bad. Shame on you.
I got so good at it, though. I would put my Bible in my hand, put my hand over my face like I was intently reading, and I'd fall asleep. And I'd hold the book there, and I'd have my face just pointed right down at it. And then every time they started singing, I'd stand up real quick and, Jesus loves me, this I know.
That sounds like a true professional.
That I got really good at it. But keep going. Yeah, sleeping during church ain't good.
So anyways, from this Ethiopian area that coffee originated from, it worked its way up through the Arabian Peninsula. Sorry. And that's where coffee really began to blossom, to bloom, because people started to figure out all these stimulating effects that coffee had on them. And it began to become a cultural thing in the Arabian Peninsula.
So, question. So, you know how people take cars, for instance. When we first started driving, people would get sick, motion sickness, because, I mean, the cars would only be going 10, 15 miles an hour. But because they weren't, I guess, like, regulated to it,
Right.
it gave them, like, got them crazy. So, when this started happening, like, do you think it was probably like, whoa, like, way crazy, like, wake up, versus where now we're accustomed to the effects of caffeine, kind of like a drug addict. You
Well,
know?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure you could line out a row of beans, crack them up, and snort them like you would cocaine, and
They'd
it
just be
probably wouldn't do
going.
a whole lot for them. But you got to realize these people were eating the berries, and they were getting all jacked off of them because it was that first experience.
Yeah.
They've never been introduced to caffeine, and I'm sure it just had a wild effect on them.
Yeah, them, their ancestors, everything before them, this coffee was just like something so new, so crazy. It's like VR right now. Some people can't handle
Exactly.
it, and some people can. But you know, that first little bit is what sets the nation off.
We should totally do a podcast in VR.
Oh, I love
that
VR.
would be intense.
Would you guys
I
want to
like
listen
that.
to a podcast about VR and where it came from? Make sure to smash that like button.
Smash it
Smash it
with your mouse,
with your mouse.
not with your finger.
Yeah.
So anyways, in the Arabian Peninsula, they started to have their first coffee shops, which weren't really shops. They were kind of like social hangouts because, like I said, coffee was kind of taking that whole place by storm. And they call these coffee shops kavaques, where they not only were serving coffee and all that stuff, but they had music there, ancient board games, I guess you would call it. They were doing games of some sorts. I don't think you would call them board games, but like music performances, just some stuff like that. It became a real social hangout for these guys.
Kind of like it is now.
Kind of like it is now, yeah.
I mean, you go into a Starbucks, you see people working there, like it's a very good atmosphere. Coffee kind of just brings people together in a general sense, you know.
It does.
I mean, any coffee shop you go into, it's more of a, it's less like a restaurant where you go in, you get your food, you get out. It's more like, oh, come in, stay a little bit, enjoy the lights, enjoy like sitting and sipping on your coffee,
or talking to people.
They
They even began referring to these coffee shops as schools of the wise.
schools of the wise.
You're
like
awake
that.
now. You can start thinking a whole lot more.
Do you think it's like Adderall though to them,
It could be like
where
I said,
they could think a million miles an hour and produce a lot of words, but the quality of that isn't the best.
which makes you wonder. I wonder if some of our greatest thinkers were able to come up with all these innovations like calculus, developing the theory behind the atom and all those stuff because they were jacked on coffee.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of scientists and a lot of college kids, I mean, studying, you always go for, like, coffee if you have to pull an all-nighter. And coffee really helps stimulate the ability, well, I wouldn't say the ability to learn, but definitely the alertness to learn. Or, you know, take in information.
You're welcome, world. Einstein was able to create the theory of relativity because of coffee.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. Coffee.
So another interesting thing, you also heard about roasted coffee, right? That's basically how all coffee comes,
Yeah.
is roasted.
Yeah.
Well, they began roasting coffee in the Arabian Peninsula because they didn't want people to take the seeds or the berries and go take them and plant them somewhere else and create their own coffee plants.
Yeah.
So they started roasting them or boiling them to make them infertile. So now the Arabian Peninsula basically had a monopoly on coffee. And so by roasting them or boiling them, no one else could take those seeds and go plant them somewhere and create their own coffee industry. So that's where the whole idea behind roasted coffee comes.
So when they started doing this, was there like a revolution where they're like, "Don't keep the coffee from us"? Like, I'm sure there was probably some.
Well, obviously, eventually it spread because now we have our main producer of coffee is Brazil, and people in Southwest America who are pretty far from the Arabian Peninsula.
Yeah, just a tad, a skip across the pond, as they say. I mean, there are so many different, and I think it's interesting how they roast them, and there's different types of roasts. I mean, you got your dark roast,
Yep.
all the way to your light roast, whereas your light roast is actually more concentrated than your dark roast because all those nutrients and I guess chemicals in the coffee actually burns up. And so people are always like, oh, I'm a light roast kind of guy. I like that pale, the blonde coffees, as they say.
Blonde
the
coffees.
blonde coffees. And it's like, you don't know anything about coffee, do you? A dark roast will actually be lighter than any other type of roast. So what happens after this?
So, after this, of course, coffee gets out. And travelers from Europe who were trading in the Arabian Peninsula brought it back
Really?
to Europe. Because you hear a lot about coffee shops in Europe and how popular they are and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how it was perceived. Of course, they brought coffee back from the Arabian Peninsula, brought it into Europe. And of course, the Catholic Church was like, no way. We are having no part of this. There is a ban on coffee.
Was it seen more as a kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? More of a temptation.
Exactly.
So it's
yes.
thought out as a temptation for them. So they're like, Jesus don't approve.
Exactly.
Jesus drank wine, not coffee. I'm sorry, but get that out of Europe.
No, it's hard to conceive the Catholics not approving of anything.
Yeah.
But it was there. It happened. They even called it the bitter invention of Satan.
Really?
Was the name for coffee.
Do you think there was any racial implications there?
There very well could have, because you got to realize the Arabian Peninsula was full of the Muslims.
Yeah.
Who the Catholic Church also did not approve of.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
So it could have been this, but the British, the UK, they really resort to tea.
They really resorted to tea, and we'll get to that one later.
Oh, good. So continue. I'm enjoying this.
So basically, coffee was kind of like a nix in Europe until actually one of the popes. I don't remember which pope it was.
Pope Francis II.
Sure.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Don't judge too harshly. But he tried it and then found out how stimulating it was and how much clearer he was. And he was like, heck yeah, bring this stuff in, man.
Yeah.
And so that's when coffee really started to take over Europe. And it actually took the place of your breakfast beverage in Europe, which was usually beer and wine. Because, they just liked to party back then.
They like to party.
Because beer and wine was fine, but anything that made you think, it was not okay.
Beer is made of from what, wheat and barley.
Wheat, barley, hops, stuff like that.
Yeah, all those organics, and wine came from fruit. So why could it be bad?
It's all natural.
But coffee comes from beans, so it's all natural. Everything. I mean, vodka comes from potatoes.
Potatoes.
So I like this because the Pope had so much influence to be like, nah, it's not.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what.
It was
it's great.
basically just like he said it was okay, and everybody was like, cool.
So I don't know what the standing right now is, but the recent Pope, he said, we're gonna let gays come into our churches, and they can be a part of it. And a lot of people, I think he had like a small backlash, like, oh no, the gays are bad and this and that. But he's like, no, we're gonna be accepting. We're gonna let them in, and it kind of like became this really good like standing with the church, like, oh, let the LGBT community into our churches.
And I think that's absolutely right, because I think if you're going to have any stance on any sort of power or religion, you need to bring those people in.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of what you believe, I think you need to be accepting of anybody.
Yeah,
and that's just my
exactly.
stance. And I have pretty conservative views, and this is one thing that I think you should be accepting of anybody, even if you don't
Yeah.
particularly believe that.
But I just like how the Pope has that much influence. Yeah, coffees are good. The LGBT community, good.
Just bring it all in.
Just bring it all in. Let life be good. So after Europeans are like, oh yeah, okay, coffee's good now.
So obviously we're progressing through time here, and I wish I had a timeline set up. But basically, now we're getting into the New World. It came over to America.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the British and Americans were drinking mostly tea at the time, right? Because that was their beverage of choice, was tea. Until this small little thing that happened called the American Revolution, in which all the Americans decided to throw all the tea in the harbor.
Yeah.
So now,
Revolution!
of course, they can't start their morning on beer and wine because they wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
And so now coffee became super prevalent in America. And they actually called it a patriotic duty to drink coffee because tea was just seen as British influence, and they wanted no part of that.
So, okay, question. you may know this, you may not. Was coffee actually like harvested here? Or like was it planted and did it take, or is it more of a shipped kind of
At
good?
this time, I want to say it was still all being imported through, that
Yeah.
Arabian Peninsula, Europe. I'm sure they had small plantations here and there.
Yeah.
But you got to realize you have to have a certain climate in order to harvest
Yeah.
that coffee. You can't really grow it in the Alps. You can't grow it in Britain. It has to be kind of in that equator line.
Yeah, regulating the temperature and the humidity, I'm sure, was a huge
Exactly.
thing.
They
So-
didn't have greenhouses back then. It wouldn't work.
So just instead of getting tea from the British, we got coffee from the peninsula.
Exactly.
That's pretty good. All right. So after the American Revolution, we took coffee into our household. That's when Folgers,
Exactly.
the greatest American drink in the morning, came along. By the way, I don't like Folgers. I grind my own beans. I am what I call a purist when it comes to my coffee.
I am not. I'll take whatever's on the table.
Devin's like a cheap, dirty hooker.
Exactly. Diner coffee is the best kind of coffee you can have.
Yeah, I know. Every time he's like, we should stop at Denny's, get some coffee. I'm like, I don't want coffee from Denny's. I know it's that Folger stuff. It's that instant stuff. I could taste it. And he's like, I don't care. Let's just get it.
Unless I can crunch on the grounds, not for me.
All right. So what happens next?
So basically what happens next is coffee just kind of takes over the world.
An explosion.
An explosion, exactly. And this is where coffee kind of becomes a staple in especially America because they saw it as their patriotic duty. But coffee kind of just takes over the entire world. Everybody is drinking coffee now at their breakfast tables, their dinner tables, however you want to do it.
Yeah. So we just took it over. Like, it became this phenomenon. And, like, I'm sure it took hundreds of years for it to catch on. But, I mean, look at it now. We have so many different types of coffee, different blends, different ways to make it. It's pretty insane.
And it's especially popular in the United States. I have some stats here.
Oh, yeah. Give it to me.
In total, the United States imported 27.5 million bags of coffee in 2014. It accounted for almost 25% of all unroasted coffee imports in the world.
Really?
And this made the U.S. the largest buyer of coffee in the world.
I believe it. I mean, us Americans, we love Starbucks. I mean, even coffee shops now are taking what Starbucks had and like creating a similar product. I mean, okay, so did you know the first Starbucks is up in Seattle? I actually just recently visited it, and it's busy. I'll tell you what.
Is it
It
really?
is so busy. It's a huge shop. Well, not huge. I'd say it's a good sized shop, but for the majority of it, there's a lot of people, and they have like 40 people working at once.
And I think you told me their coffee wasn't that good either.
I was not a fan. I was not a fan at all. I just got a regular. Okay, so I ordered a cold brew. They gave me a hot drink. I wasn't gonna wait in line, so I was like, I'll just take this, whatever. And from there, I went outside, sat down on a nice little bench, ready to enjoy it. I'm like, this is the first Starbucks ever. I love it. I'm gonna love it so much. Took a sip. No. Well, one, it burnt my tongue. That may have put a sour taste in my mouth. But
Because you were expecting a cold brew.
yeah.
Not the opposite.
Yeah, it was boiling hot. And I was just like, oh, come on, please, just I'll take another sip, wait for it to cool down. Took another sip, so bitter. It was not good. They didn't put any cream in it. They kind of messed up my order like to the max. So
Well, that's what they kind of say. Starbucks coffee is notoriously bitter.
yeah.
I've always thought it was. Whenever I get black coffee from Starbucks, I can hardly drink it.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Starbucks.
I prefer the watered down diner coffee, like
Yeah.
Denny's.
I prefer
They have that perfect blend of water and coffee. It's just
I really prefer my own, like making my own coffee. So a lot of times if you get blended coffee, like pre-blended coffee, it loses a lot of the taste. So if you blend your own coffee beans and make it right there, it's going to be much more rich, I guess.
yeah.
I mean, Starbucks has been around for a long time. I mean, 40 years. I mean, it started in 1971, and it's still going strong. I mean, it's got over 30,000 locations. 30,000.
That's wild.
Okay, so take 50 states, right? You got 50 states in America, and then divide that by 30,000. I mean, just a second. Let me just give me a second.
Some hard calculations.
600 Starbucks
Per state?
per state. And I'm sure that's not, I mean, I'm sure there's like 7,000 in at least California.
Exactly.
Easily. But yeah, Starbucks is huge. I mean, and it's all about coffee. I mean, when was the last time you went there and got anything but coffee?
I like their coffee cake.
Yeah, the coffee cake's good.
It's really good.
Okay,
but
so
I never really go there to get sandwiches or anything. I don't get food from there. Like I'll get a snack like coffee cake, but I go to Starbucks to get coffee. Especially my wife. My wife is a Starbucks connoisseur.
Mine too.
Starbucks takes a lot of my paycheck.
A lot. They're getting a little expensive. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, my wife likes the peach infusion. What is it? The refresher.
That's not coffee.
No, it's not coffee. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? She's like, I don't like it being bitter.
She's not doing her patriotic duty.
No.
She should be drinking coffee for America.
I know, it's ridiculous. I mean, they've been so. Also, they've sent so many different trends. I mean, pumpkin spice latte. I mean, that's
Obviously,
huge.
that's like the
huge.
white girl's go-to choice.
Exactly, and going over like their annual cup sales and stuff like that. I mean, I saw a cup because I like to go on eBay and sell stuff. I saw a cup on there going for like $500. It's a limited.
Was it like a limited edition?
It's a limited edition, like 2012 Christmas cup. I'm like, it's a cup. What are you gonna spend $500 on? So there's so many different types of coffee as well.
There is, and especially in the last couple of years, we've had a huge increase in coffee sales because of all these instant coffee methods we have, like the Keurig with the K cups.
Oh, those are
and
terrible.
Stuff like that. I mean, they've just made coffee sales exploded.
I know, and I feel like it was huge back in the day, but I feel like people more drank it to stay alive, stay awake. But now it's more of a statement, like, oh, I gotta grab my coffee before anyone talks to me, like that kind of thing. Whereas back in the day, it was just like, I'll just take a black coffee to go, and I'm good. And I mean, now there's so many different coffee types. Like, okay, so a cappuccino, you know, that has espresso. You got some milk foam, some milk. Americano, that's a classic, right? You got espresso and just water. And espresso is full espresso. Macchiato, you got milk foam and macchiato, you got milk foam and espresso. Mocha, chocolate syrup, some milk, an espresso, and a latte. I mean, there's so many different things, like a latte, espresso, and milk. And just like changing one ingredient, it makes all the difference. People are really becoming artists. You know how there are food artists and chefs who really get into the thing, or mixologists.
Really?
Like alcoholic beverage artists. That they are looked at like, oh my gosh, these guys are so cool. And I feel like the barista, which is somebody who makes coffee and serves it, is the next artisan of food and beverage. And I definitely think that's somewhere that like we're gonna end up. I mean, we are already there with the digital age and everything. I mean, I could watch coffee on Instagram for days, honestly.
For days.
But up to this point, I mean, it wasn't accessible in the way that it is now. You want to take a breather real quick?
Let's take a
just
quick
take a-
break, guys.
Yeah, a quick break. We will be right back. This is a message from our sponsor. Yeah, see you in a second. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Socially Inadequate podcast. We were talking about coffee before the break. Hopefully you enjoyed our sponsor. No one.
No one. All 5 of our listeners out there.
Yes, definitely. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the health risks of coffee and also the pros. Coffee has a lot of benefits, a lot of, not proven.
A lot of mythology around it about what it does for you.
I know.
People think coffee is the miracle drug in
give
some
you
things.
the heart of a lion from time to time.
Exactly.
as they
Especially
say.
if you drink black coffee.
Yes, black coffee is where it's at. So let's do one benefit and then one downside. So benefit of coffee is it could help protect against type 2 diabetes.
Exactly. They say that coffee has loaded with antioxidants.
Yep, and it could increase plasma levels of protein, sex hormone, SHBG. So, yeah.
SHBG?
Yeah, SHBG. Sex hormone binding globium.
So, for all you guys out there who want to, have a nice night at home, load your girl up with some coffee, you'll be good to go.
That's right. Get that
Apparently.
testosterone going, that estrogen going.
According to Google.
According to Google, yeah. From what research we did, well, okay, this was research at UCLA, so it does have a little bit of backing.
Is it a .org?
Huh?
Is it a
Yeah. I found it at a .org, so
You always
don't worry.
gotta have .org or .edu. That tells you that we actually know what we're talking about. Because you get those .coms and you just are a fool.
Or God forbid you get those .edus. Those are just full of lies.
Lies up and down.
Education. So okay, let's go to a negative effect of coffee.
So a negative effect of coffee, obviously, for anybody who drinks coffee out there, it increases your lower intestinal procession.
It gets you going.
Gets you going. It gets you cleared out.
Yeah, something in the fiber department. If you're low in that, you can just drink a cup of coffee.
So if you're having problems in the lower intestinal department, start down in that coffee. It'll come out one way or another.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I've had a couple cups of coffee once, and more than once it has ended in me rushing to the bathroom, and it's sometimes it's a little rough. So yeah. Also a benefit, coffee and Parkinson's disease. Researchers in the U.S. carried out a study that assessed the link between coffee consumption and Parkinson's disease risk. Higher coffee and caffeine intake association with a significant lower incidence of Parkinson's disease. So, if you're worried about getting Parkinson's disease at some point in your life, start drinking that coffee, and hopefully it'll lower your chances.
So a con now.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever got the shakes from drinking too much coffee?
Sometimes, yeah.
So they say that a person can only take in up to 400 milligrams of caffeine a day before they really start getting the bad side effects of caffeine.
Yeah.
Because there is a perfect balance between being awake, active, doing what you need to do, and just being overstimulated to the point where you're shaking, your eyes are wobbling, and not much good happens from that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've had those moments where I'm a little shaky, a little bit much, but it's mainly when I don't eat beforehand. It's kind of like drinking before, like without eating. You get drunk faster because there's nothing in your stomach to absorb.
Exactly.
All that good stuff. So
one time I took 2 of the 5-hour energies at once.
Ooh.
Because I thought, I just thought they would double up. I'd have 10 hours energy.
Yeah.
No, I had 5 hours of extreme energy. It does not work like that.
That would be interesting to do a podcast about.
And it
energy
was
drinks.
It just seemed like I was super shaky.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't focus, and I just felt like the world was spinning around me. There is a thing as too much caffeine, and it can make you sick.
I once took a drink of Red Line. I was driving to California, which is about 8 hours away from where we live, and I drank a double dose of Red Line Energy, which it is unrecommended that you drink more than half of the bottle at one time because you could possibly die of a heart attack. So I drank it without knowing, and then I was up for about 48 hours straight, and then I passed out and slept for about 20 hours.
Did you get anything done in those 48 hours?
I drove nonstop to California. That was pretty good. And then I got there and I just sat on the beach and I couldn't blink very much.
It was just kind of glued open.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like I got there early in the morning and I was like, I'm going to sit on the beach. It's going to be beautiful. I'm going to watch the sunrise. It's going to be great. Because I was driving overnight because that's the easiest time to go through Death Valley, which is ridiculously hot. If you've ever been to Death Valley, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like 130 degrees, 140 degrees, that kind of thing. So go at night and you'll avoid that. It'll be like 100 degrees.
Just get
which is
all jacked up on Red Line.
Yeah, get jacked up, just drive on
You'll
through.
Be fine. You won't be able to enjoy the beach, but you
Yeah.
will drive through Death Valley.
So I got there to the beach. I was watching the sunrise, and I just feel my heart beating really fast. I feel like I'm not blinking. My eyes are drying out. And I'm like, I have a problem. I look over to my wife, and I'm like, hey, we need to go to the hotel or something. I need some melatonin because I feel like I'm going to die. She's like, okay, well, after the sunrise. And then we went. It was great. It was really great.
Glad you were awake for it.
Yeah. I mean, energy drinks. If you guys want to hear us do a podcast on it and where energy drinks came from, make sure to comment down
That would be a good
below.
one. Or anything you want to hear about. Like I said, we wanted to restrict this podcast to basically anything. Anything you observe, anything you ever wondered about, we can do a podcast on. And that's what we want to be, as open as possible.
That's
and I
right.
think that'd be really fun because it gives us such diversity and such abilities to be able to talk about all these different things.
And if we're talking about stuff, I mean, at least one person's being happy because they requested it. So if you guys want us to talk about something, make sure to comment down below or tweet at us, DM us in Instagram, or just comment on this video. Whether you saw it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, you know, it's always good to let us know. And make sure to follow us on all those platforms. We'll be talking, doing polls. Very a huge amount of interaction with our fans and our followers. So make sure to do that. And I think that's about it.
That wraps up what I had on coffee.
Yeah, I know that it has been 45 minutes of talking. So I think we're good. That is the
think we're
end
good.
of episode 1.
Episode 1 of many to come.
Yep, many to come. At least 100.
There we go.
If we ever get to
I would like to
1,000,
do 100.
if we ever get to 1,000, I think I might just quit.
I think we need to throw a huge party.
If we
I
get
think
to
if we get
1,000
to 25, we need to throw a huge party.
At 25, oh man, I'm hoping. We're hoping to do this every week, and eventually do 2 a week, 3 a week,
That would be
depending.
really cool.
Because we're not doing video right now. If you guys want to see our beautiful faces, make sure to let us know. Yeah, it's really fun to be able to talk to you guys, talk to Devin, and yeah, we might live stream at some point when we're really big.
That would be cool. Get like a booth set up.
Yeah,
What do they call those? Where the people like present in. Is it a booth?
yeah, a booth.
Is that what it is?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Anyway, I'm not very podcast savvy.
So yeah, once we get to 100 subscribers, we might answer some questions from you, the viewers. So make sure to get us there. But yeah, thanks
Recommend
guys.
us to your friends.
Recommend us to your friends and family and whatever else. And yeah, from the Socially Inadequate podcast, this is the end of episode 1. Thanks for staying tuned. And if you're still here, you are a true hero. 45 minutes is a long time, but for you to make it through, this is a special thanks just to you.
And hopefully you guys all stay tuned for the next episodes that we have to come. And I'm really excited about the future for Socially Inadequate. And the things we get to talk about, I'm really excited for all these different things.
Yep. All right. Well, good night, guys. We'll see you later.
See you later.
I